Hello and welcome back to Chicks Talking Shifts. I'm Angel.
And I'm Alicia.
Well, before we get started, we have some shouting out to do. We are so excited to watch our numbers and our downloads grow with every episode. There is a certain part of the planet that is taking an interest in Chicks Talking Shift that we have got to acknowledge. Alicia, I'll give you the honors.
Oh, it's been so much fun to watch. It really has. So we have a huge shout out to Dublin, Ireland.
Woohoo! Dublin.
Got it going.
Dublin is in the house. We are so thrilled to see all of the activity in Dublin. We have no idea what's happening there, but we are excited to see that you are engaging in our conversations and tuning in.
Absolutely. And so, hey, if you're listening, we're curious what's going on, Dublin. Are there a group of you who know each other or what's going on there? So, why don't you drop us a line at chickstalkingshift@gmail.com and just give us a little insight as to what's going on there. But we just wanted you to know that we so appreciate you and hope you continue to listen. It's fun to think about you all the way over there listening to us.
Well, with that being said, let's get the show on the road, shall we?
We are engaging in a conversation about something that I know I've had to tap into a lot lately. I know you have too. And that is the topic of courageousness, virtue of courage. I think courage is the word of the year. What do you think?
I think so too. You know, it's so interesting to me that years ago, Oprah was talking to Maya Angelou and she asked her, what is the most important virtue? And Maya Angelou said, courage. Because without courage, you can't be and do those other things. That has always stuck with me. And I think you're right about it being the word of the year, because when everything is changed and you're different and the world out there is different, and especially when you're feeling a little bit vulnerable because of the shifting sands and not knowing what to trust or believe and all of that, you need courage. It takes courage to face that, especially when you're in a vulnerable state. So, since I knew we were going to talk about courage, I looked up the definition. And I think you also looked up the definition, and I find it very interesting, the different ways that it's described. So what I found on dictionary.com was, it says that courage is the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty, danger, pain, etc., without fear. I call BS on that. I think the majority of the time, I think we're often in fear when we experience courage. What about you, Angel?
Well, I too was researching this topic a little bit because I wanted to hear some different perspectives on courage. And I came across a website called the Fearless Leaders Group. And I'm really quite impressed with this group. Some of what I'll be sharing today is stemming from their website. So I want to be sure to credit them. But this definition, they say in its simplest form, courage is the willingness to act in the face of fear, not without fear, in the face of fear,
Yes.
and in uncertainty and in times of doubt. And that truly is courage. So the willingness to act in the face of fear. What I think is interesting about this particular definition is sometimes we tap into courage unwillingly.
Yes.
It's a necessity, and we tap into a level of courage that we are not even aware that we have. We're really talking about tapping into that courageous part of ourselves that we really haven't had to exercise much. We are now being asked to step out of our comfort zone, re-enter a new world that is a little bit more unfamiliar than how we left it. So there's another level of courage that is required by us that we're not even aware of yet. what I've learned, especially after researching this, is that courage isn't something that is innate. Courage is something that is developed, and it is a cognitive ability. There's something in the brain that through neuroplasticity, we can redevelop over time through courageous acts. And we can strengthen that muscle just by stepping out of that comfort zone and doing things that require a little bit more courage. And I know we have some ideas on how we can practice that, because it is such a needed behavior.
No, it's so true, right? It reminds me of an onion. There's layers and layers, and there's all different kinds of courage. What is it? When do we need it? And how do we get it? There's just so many questions around it.
This is something that we were talking about. I mean, what is it about courage that is so timely right now? Why do you think it's so important?
Well, because I think as we step out into a bit of a different world in hopefully some different ways, and the reason that I say that is just because it seemed like what we were before wasn't working so well, but we just kind of went on automatic pilot and just went along with, and some of us were having fun and distracted, and this whole pandemic thing just stopped everybody in their tracks. And as I'm getting out in the world, I'm realizing that things aren't quite the same as they used to be. And so when you're feeling vulnerable, it takes courage to be able to do something different. And I think if we want to start to counterbalance and heal some of the effects that we've been through, as well as change some of the trajectories and the systems that we've seen, it's going to take courage to step in a different way, to know ourselves, to use our voice. I think if we want to create a better world and we don't like what we've seen, we've got to do something different. And that's change. And generally that requires courage to be able to face it. So you can get those uncomfortable feelings up in you that you don't want to say it, you don't want to do it. What if? But if we don't, we all need some courage right now, because we need to make some massive changes. And it's going to take courage to face those changes.
Absolutely true. Change does require courage, whether you intentionally set that change for yourself or if change is happening by default. Anytime change happens, transformation then gets put into motion.
Yeah.
Transformation requires a level of courage. If we don't power through the transformation process, we can spiral backwards and go into a dark place if we do not allow that natural process of transformation to take place. So it takes courage to keep stepping forward, stepping out of the turmoil that change has caused, or that event has caused, because there's always a level of uncertainty with change that creates fear. And nobody wants to deal with fear. So we sweep it under the rug instead of courageously pulling that rug back, looking at it and going, okay, what do I have to do here?
When you bring up the fear, what that takes me to is the question, why is it hard to get that courage sometimes, which is often the courage to be different, because you're going against the grain. Sometimes it's difficult to have those conversations or stand alone when it seems in your decision, when it seems that everybody else is going in a different direction. And so in thinking about that, what makes it so difficult? And part of it, I think, is that we've got, back in caveman days, we needed to really fit well within the tribe, because we were out, we were vulnerable in a world. We didn't have these big homes and gated communities and everything else. And so you needed to rely upon the village resources for the person that was the best hunter so that you could be fed, the medicine woman, people to watch your children while you're out doing things. To step out away from the tribe in a different way back then was very, very dangerous, because it left you vulnerable. We still have that place in our brain stems. We know that. And so it makes it a lot, there's kind of a conflict that happens within the brain we know we don't necessarily need that, but yet we're still driven by those evolutionary forces. So I think that's kind of at the base of not wanting to step out and be different than other people, or having the courage to be at the boardroom table and everybody else on the board, or even in a jury situation. You're the only one that feels different. It takes a lot of courage to stand not only within yourself, but also sometimes against the slings and arrows of other people that don't only disagree with you, but also chastise you and tell you why you're wrong.
Wow, such a good point. That song by Taylor Swift comes to mind. Shake it off, shake it off. Because of the haters and there are always people out there that are going to judge you. And you talk about the evolution of humanity from the caveman days. We are going through a massive evolution right now. In a very quick period of time, our species is undergoing such a massive shift right now. This is why it is so important to have this conversation today, because we're all being called to be a little bit more courageous in our intention about why we're here, how we behave, how we treat one another, increasing our awareness, our level of consciousness, just being more aware of how we respond to the changes, being accountable for our own personal growth. This all takes courage. But because humanity is going through this together and we're reacting to it differently, people are just becoming more isolated. People are perhaps encountering more anxiety and stress because they don't know what's happening, but it's where this oneness of humanity is kicking in. It is a collective experience we're all having. If we tap into this thing called courage, we can all get through it a little bit more. So those of us who are able can be a little bit more brave at this time, have a little bit more tenacity and tap into that, then that will help us carry those other parts of our human brothers and sisters along collectively on a conscious level. So the more we step into it, the easier it's going to be for all of us. And you're also setting an example, becoming a role model. That courageous is kind of cool, and it feels good once you step into it.
Have you ever noticed how many of our movies these days are about superheroes?
Yes.
We are in the turning of the ages. Humanity has accelerated so much in their personal knowledge and evolution. What's happened with technology over the last 30 or 40 years is crazy, let alone what happened in the beginning of the 20th century. So we are in a time where everything has been so accelerated that it has accelerated our personal evolution. That's part of the collision that we're experiencing right now. The truth is, not all of us are making it. It's creating a chasm. It's creating a gap between the haves and have not. It used to just be about money, but these days it's also about technology and how you're capable of moving in a digital world. And there's a lot of people that have not come along in this digital world with us very well, and they're getting left by the wayside. It's a turning of the ages. It takes courage to face the rapid change that we need to make the change in trajectory from where we are, because we saw that we were going somewhere rapidly that wasn't very good. It's going to take courage to make change, because we don't like change. Humans don't like change. We're just naturally resistant to it, especially when you're feeling vulnerable and you don't know where you're going. So when we see where we've been, we've had those veils ripped away. We've had the revelations. We've seen the Maya. We're seeing the illusion. The only way to change it is to do something different. If each of us did our best to step into our courage a little bit more, no matter what that means, whether that's saying something difficult, whether it's admitting something about yourself, whether it's challenging authority, whether it's facing an illness or something along those lines. The more of us that step into courage, which means doing something different, the faster all of this will change for us. We can change that trajectory magically.
I think it's important to point out that we have to be intentional about it. because many of us humans are defaulting to a negative. It's the contrast of where we want to go. It is creating more divisiveness in our world. It is creating more violence in our world. There's a lot of that going on too. It's important that we are intentional about creating positive change.
Consciously courageous.
Consciously courageous. Yes, I love that term. That really serves humanity. Because we can be courageous and go out and commit a crime. That takes courage too. But how is that serving humanity? That's what we're being called to do. I guess that's the call to action that this shift is requiring if we're going to go into the future. If not, we'll go backwards and there won't be much of a future for our species. There just won't be. And I look back at my life, it helps me to understand the times that I've tapped into courage in the past, helps me develop a belief that I can do it again. I still have that courageous sensibility within and become it again. And so what's preventing me from doing that? Are there other times in your life that you have felt that you've really become more courageous? When you think of your journey so far, what are some examples in your life where courage has played a role?
One place I know I've had courage is I've done some pretty dangerous hikes around the country, and I've been in some pretty precarious, dangerous situations. One of them is one of the most dangerous hikes in the country. It's called Angel's Landing. It's in Zion National Park. It was really treacherous. You know, I think it's like 1,600 feet up on this little sheer, barely wide enough, much wider than your feet to walk along this edge to get out to this beautiful vista. And that took courage. When I did that, though, it's so interesting. I was thinking about my process. So what was that? I think I have a really good ability to compartmentalize my fear. I think that I've realized that I'm really good about being able to put it behind a door and shut it out to just get the focus that I need in the moment. And I think that's what I did in that situation. I just shut the feeling of the fear in my body. It doesn't mean that my heart wasn't pounding and things like that. But I think that's the way that I did that one.
Really good point.
And I wouldn't have ever known that had I not faced that situation. I mean, we didn't know we heard that it was kind of treacherous, but you don't know until you get to the places just how treacherous it is, especially when you're with other people, right? So talking about the village, you're with other people. So what are you going to do? Are you going to turn around? Are you going to go back by yourself? Or you want them to go back with you? I mean, you know, there's all kinds of dynamics, which are interesting psychologies that come into play sometimes to give you more courage, because it's like, ooh, well, they're okay. So I'm going to get up a little bit more courage because I want to do that. All these different kinds of courages. And so that's one of the ones that I think about, which was kind of a physical, mental kind of courage. But I also think about you because you've had more recent courage. You stepping off the cliff, not knowing what was going to happen, packing up, getting rid of things, moving to another state. You didn't know where you were going to land, how you were going to do it, what you were going to do it with. You just knew that you felt driven to do it. You needed to make the big change. That took a lot of courage. And so when you look back at how it felt then and where you are now, what does that journey look like?
Well, when I look back, and as you were talking about the treacherous hike and the fear that you had to set aside, I was thinking of the fear, the days that I woke up in fear. What am I doing? Why am I'm getting rid of all my things? This is absolutely crazy. Angel, you've lost your mind. I had all these thoughts, but that was fear. That's the ego going, hello, I'm here to protect and survive. And you are completely demolishing my ability to do that by doing something we've never done before. And we don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. So my ego was having a field day with me on some days. And that fear was stepping in going, wow, should I really be doing this? Maybe I should just stay here and keep doing what I'm doing, which would have been the easiest thing to do. But there was just something about the adventure and mixing it up. And I will say, because there is that neuroscience element to practicing courage, that I felt something in my brain activate when I was going through it. It was activating me, it was energizing me. The whole thought of it was like, wow, we are doing something totally different. Although when I was 22, I did pick up and move to Los Angeles. So it's not the first time I've ever done this. I do have a little bit of a gypsy in my blood, but I've been a tenacious person most
Yeah.
of my life. I think it's settled down quite a bit in my adult life as you become a mom and everything. But even trying out for the Lovables, of being in a room with hundreds and hundreds of talented, beautiful women, young women, I had so much doubt at that age in thinking, I am not good enough to be here. What makes me think I'm good enough to be here? That just took courage, just to just keep dancing, smiling, keep dancing and smiling. And that somehow got me through the tryouts. And I do believe that smiling is one of the components to help develop courage, because it does send a signal to the brain that releases some endorphin that says everything's going to be okay. So when you smile, it does help you get through those courageous moments. To your point about this journey, picking up, getting rid of all of your material possessions for the most part, packing a carload of stuff and moving to another state across the country, it has been the most worthwhile endeavor I have ever encountered. So
Wow.
that courage is paying off, and it keeps paying off. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier is, what are some examples of when we need courage? And that's doing stuff like this, doing stuff you've never done, whether you have to do it or whether you're choosing to do it. I chose to do this. It's been very rewarding. Got to Florida, didn't know what to expect. It's been a great experience so far. And then out of nowhere, I met somebody and started having a relationship, something I haven't done in a very long time. And what I didn't realize is how much courage is required to start a new relationship,
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes.
because of the vulnerability. You're putting yourself out there. You're having to share aspects of your life, 50 some odd years, with a stranger, opening yourself up to learning about their lives, intermingling emotions. It's been really interesting because there's a ripple effect in relationships as well that you don't realize. You're meeting a person, it's mentally stimulating, and it's just lights you up when you meet someone new and you have a great connection. It's like, oh wow, this is awesome. And then you realize how it impacts all of the other relationships in your life. How does
Mm.
having this personal relationship that is now developing, you now have to have other courageous conversations and have awareness around how that can impact your other relationships. And I'm talking specifically about how it impacts my relationship with my son, my ex-husband, my friendships that I was spending more time with. Now it's less time with them. All those things have an impact on relationships that you could just ignore it, or you could have those courageous conversations and say, gosh, I haven't been this happy in a really, really long time. And invite them in to see where you are. It does take courage to be in a relationship. It takes courage to end a relationship. Just as
Yeah.
much courage to start a relationship as it does to end a relationship. The people out there who are going through relationship changes, whatever that looks like, just know you've got the courage to get through it.
That's so fascinating, Angel, because I'm an old married woman. I've been married for a long time. And so I haven't had to do the relationship thing. And I think about what that would feel like now, especially as a, middle-aged woman. The world has changed since I dated and all that. Things are digital, and there's selfies and the Facebook dating and the apps and swiping left and right and all of that kind of stuff. Sexting, never had any of that kind of stuff. That's a whole new world all of a sudden that's got a language and a culture, and it would take a lot of courage to head into that. I'm not saying you did all that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay. Yes,
No,
please clarify for our
right,
listeners.
no, because I know I've had friends that have had to go through that within the last
Oh.
5 or 10 years. And I've seen that they're teaching me about things that I wouldn't know exist because that's not in my world. And so, yeah, you bring consciousness to me about how much it does take courage to enter into a new relationship and make yourself vulnerable. That's
Yeah,
so
you want to
true.
talk about courage. Okay. I have invited him to my family weddings up here in Chicago. I'm actually recording this up here in Chicago at my brother's house. This guy is coming into my huge Italian Catholic family. He's agreed to it. So yeah, he's a pretty courageous guy, I would say.
That takes a whole
Yeah.
hell of a lot of courage. Oh my God.
Certainly a curiosity. I've not brought anybody home since I was 25 years old. So this is new. It's definitely stepping out of the comfort zone. It's just easier for me to show up by myself. There's no drama. I don't have to worry about anybody judging me or anything. It is definitely all new.
Right. We've got the whole relationship courage, the new relationships, even tapping into courage in relationships that you've had for a long time, friendships, good friendships, family relationships, because it takes courage to show up in those relationships to stand as you are without necessarily forming yourself to be what they want you to be. And that can be very difficult. Healthy relationships require healthy boundaries. That takes courage to be able to use your voice in all kinds of situations, in the workplace, in relationships, standing up to authority. That's a big one where we are right now. There are powers that be that have way too much authority over our lives, and bringing our voice to the table and saying, we're not going to stand for this. You're not going to control us like this anymore, especially in the changing systems, because systems are in flux right now. And if we don't find courage to bring our voice to the table and challenge the systems with the way things are going, we're going to be in even more hurt later on. So yeah, bringing that kind of courage to the table.
It is setting aside the fear of loss, because that's the only reason we do not engage in these courageous conversations, is we don't want to have some sort of loss. I can't stand up to my boss because I may lose my job.
Right. We're afraid to lose our jobs, so we don't speak up to our employers, and they tighten the grip more and more, and you got to be in on the minute, and if you have 3 strikes then you're out, and just controlling, not allowing for life circumstances. 3 days bereavement when someone passes, come on. Some people might be happy to get back to work, but there's others that cannot function after 3 days after losing a loved one. And so I think the way some of these systems got so distorted and so broken is because we've swallowed our voice because fear of loss.
Yes, I have a great story about my son who recently graduated college, started a new gig at a major organization, and he's just not happy. The culture and his personality are not a good fit. And I suggested, rather than just complaining about it and dreading going to work and all that, that's not healthy. Maybe you should have a courageous conversation with your boss. I'm sure they'd like to have some feedback on all the time and money that they have put out there to train you as a new college grad hire for this leadership role. They would probably like to know how it's working out in the field. So I invite you to have that courageous conversation with your boss. And he did. And he did not hold back. He was extremely honest. His boss had nothing but admiration for his honesty and candidness. Just being able to approach somebody with more authority than him to say, hey, here's my experience. Here's what's not working for me. And his boss responded with, I want to give you some more challenges. I'm already thinking about a promotion idea for you.
Well, it was courage.
But Nick was just like, hey, you know what? He had no fear of loss. He thought they're going to fire me over what I have to say about this experience, then I'll just find something else. He believed in himself enough. He knows himself enough. He trusts himself enough. So he didn't have that fear of loss when he approached his manager. If we do have some faith in knowing that the outcome is going to be for our benefit, and that when we do speak our truth, especially to authority, we've had these conversations in some of our other podcasts. As we go back into the workplace, people who want to remain at home, who now have the option to going into work or working at home. Some companies are saying, nope, you have to come in. So many people are like, why are you making me do that? These are courageous conversations that are taking place right now as we speak.
Well, that's so true, because some have to go back, some don't have to go back. And then there's other ones that are hybrid situations. And so it might be one thing that you know what you want and what you're most comfortable with. But what do you do when everybody else in the office has gone back and you're not comfortable with it for whatever reason? That takes courage to stand out as the one person that's not going back, because what's that going to look like is where we go, right?
Well,
And
and here's the other thought that's occurring to people, that if they don't go, does that hurt them in
Yes.
potentially being promoted or considered for certain projects? Out of sight, out of mind. So there's that fear of loss again, fear of
Yes.
losing out.
Yeah.
Where's the motivation coming from? Is it coming
Right.
from fear,
Well,
or is it coming from love? That's what you have to determine when making those decisions.
yeah, that's so true.
I think another place where courage is required that I didn't realize is when it has to do with our health and lifestyle choices. Change your eating habits, change your exercise habits. It took some courage to say, okay, I'm a little out of shape, practicing something we haven't practiced in the face of fear or doubt and uncertainty.
What came to mind for me was eating differently, because what do? As tribal people, we kind of bond around food. There's a sharing and a breaking of bread. It takes a lot of courage to speak your needs, of saying, I cannot do this anymore because this is what I need to do for me, especially like in my situation where we don't have kids at home or anything else, and I need to change my eating habits. And my guys are used to me, cooking and all that stuff, which, generally I'm happy to do. But sometimes I need to change my eating habits just for me. And so I say, look, you just need to know you're going to be on your own for a while, because I'm going to do this for myself. Or this is all I'm doing in the situation for you. If you need something else, then you're welcome to supplement that however you need it. And so I
Mhm.
think sometimes it's difficult for women, moms, the hub of the family, to do something different for themselves, because it's what they need, instead of just going along with what everybody else is doing and what they think they're happy with.
In some relationships, you might be made to feel bad about feeling that way and wanting to do those things. There might be a level of guilt. They're having to adapt. And that's what we talked about earlier, how change has a ripple effect. It does require courage on their part as well. The more you can communicate clearly and honestly during those moments where
Yeah.
others might feel maybe a little threatened, maybe a little sense of loss, then you can walk through those moments together. That will certainly build the relationship for sure.
Right. Well, how to build a bridge with others from where you are to where you need to go, and trying to find what a happy medium. It might not be happiest for everybody, but it's a happy medium to where I meet both your needs and my needs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're codependent, right? And so it's when you go into codependence, you sell yourself out,
Right.
because you have to make everybody else okay, whether it's because of how they are that you feel coerced to be that way, or because you don't want someone else to have to suffer. You want them to be happy and whatever. It's a very fine line between codependence and compassion, and so that's a conversation you and I need to have.
Yes, we will.
Yes.
We'll expand on that one. That's a
Yes,
good one.
no, but yeah, how to build that bridge between meeting your needs as well as meeting theirs, and not being the one that's always selling themselves out or sacrificing themselves on behalf of everybody else. That takes courageous conversation. You know what? That's one of the things we've lost. Somehow, somewhere along the way, we seem to have lost the ability to compromise. And so I think that we would be a little bit better off if we found ways to say, this is what I need, this is what you need. What can we compromise and how can we make it so we both can get the best out of this?
Courageous conversations.
Just another thing, because it's just been all up in my field, as you know, from our last conversation, death, the courage to face death.
Yes, it
Whether
does take courage.
your illness or your death, or somebody that you love, their illness and their death. You talk about courage and you talk about forced courage. A lot of times, those are the kind of situations that we get squeezed into, that put constrictions on us and force us down channels that we would have never chosen on our own, that can show us that we've got more courage and we're braver than we ever knew, and that we have more capacity to be more and expand more than we necessarily ever thought. That takes a lot of courage. With the whole thing about, facing death, it's just been in the air for a lot of people. I'll tell you what, I was talking to my sister-in-law the other day and I said, I don't know if maybe I just wasn't paying attention or whether I'm just hyper focused, but I seem to have lost more people around me in the last year and a half. Now that's a couple of degrees out, not just my loss, not just family loss, but best friends, family, there's been a lot of that. And I could just rattle off so many that have happened in the last year and a half, a couple that have been COVID, but most of them not. And I'm like, what's going on? She says, no, see, because she lives in a small town. And so the thing in small towns is that a lot of people read the newspaper and they read the obituaries, because it tells them the people that they know, who's left us and who hasn't. Well, it's always been a tradition for her for decades to read the obituaries. She said, no, Alicia, she said, you are right. She said, the obituaries are pages now compared to what they were before. And she said, and I look at them. She says, I also look at the ages and that sort of thing. She said, the ages are all over the place. She said, Alicia, it's pages now compared to what it was.
Really?
Seems to be a lot more loss in the air right now. Now, part of that as well is we got baby boomers passing on, and that's
Yeah.
accelerating. But that was just fascinating to me.
Wow. See, and I'm thinking I'm seeing more loss because of the age I'm at,
That too.
that the generation before me is now passing over and turning over. And I have accepted the idea that I'm at an age where I'm going to see that generation transition. And that's what I am seeing and experiencing. But that's really interesting about the obituaries. I would have never guessed that. I thought it was just kind of where I am in my life.
Well, no, that was fascinating. It was a more detached way to view it. What it's brought up is the conversations around death. I did that celebration of life ceremony. I'm going to be doing another one now that's in my family. Are you afraid to die? I always say I'm not afraid to die. I dealt with that years ago. Not that I ever got anywhere close to death. I realized I had a very vivid dream, and I realized I had done a lot of my internal work and that I wasn't afraid of death. I just didn't want to be in pain and suffering. I don't have a fear of the other side. I'm not worried about a heaven versus hell. I know there's a lot of people that hold on for a long time when they're dying, that don't die because they're afraid they're going to go to hell.
Yes, there is a lot of fear around death and a lot of courage required for the loved ones left behind, for the ones that are still grieving. It just takes a lot of courage to get through that process of being alone without their loved one in their life anymore.
Well, listen, Angel, it's so interesting because, we recently did that podcast, What Will They Say? The
Yes.
clean slate awaits, and just doing that exercise of what do you want people to be able to say about you when you're gone, to bring you to the present, to realize if I want them to say that, then this is who I need to be now, because we don't know when we're going to go.
Yeah. So if we can have a courageous conversation and an honest communication around our fears, this is all the more reason to practice courage. Practice those having courageous conversations, practice stepping out of your comfort zones so that it builds that muscle in the brain for when you need it. When unexpected change occurs and that loss occurs, and you really need to step into that courage, it's there. Your brain knows how to do it. It recalls, I am a courageous person. I know what to do. I know how to handle it. It's a great reason to start practicing it now. And
Well,
death is a great example because it's usually unexpected.
I was thinking about what we were talking about, the systems at work, and I kept seeing stepping out from the tribe, separating yourself out from the tribe of what everybody else is doing. And it dawned on me that that's what happened with your son when he had that courageous conversation. It was just a conversation up until the point that he had the courage to speak clearly and speak his truth to the authority in the room. Because all of a sudden, what that did was that set him apart from the rest of the tribe. And now, because they've seen that trait in him that's so unusual, they want to use that and have him be and do something else because they don't see that very often. And it takes that kind of a character to be able to be a leader. And so it reminds me of the greatest ones amongst us have always been the ones that stepped out from the tribe. Our greatest orators and leaders and brilliant people, they stepped outside of the tribe to be who they are. That's what set them apart. So if we want a better world, we need to separate out from what the lemmings are doing, what the rest of the tribe is doing, and have the courage to do what's in our heart. Because when we don't, it creates resistance in the body and it causes mental, physical, and emotional breakdown. And that's part of what's going on in the Western culture is everybody's trying to fit in with what the tribe and what the business and what the boss and what the money and what the social, and they're trying to keep fitting in, and it's creating tension in their body that's not letting their mind rest because they don't have the courage to give themselves permission to do something different. It takes courage to give yourself permission to do something different.
And it does take courage to lead. It reminds me of a video that has got millions and millions of views. The First Follower, I think it's called.
Yes.
And the guy is dancing on the hill at some outdoor concert, and everyone's looking at him like he's some kind of lunatic, right? Until the first follower gets up and starts dancing with him.
Yeah.
Now that guy's really the true leader there. It took courage for the first guy to dance. It took courage for the next guy to join him in dancing, knowing that people were laughing at him. That's a great example of leadership. I love that video. I use it in leadership training all the time. It's a great one. Where we are now in reinventing ourselves, reinventing our new world, how can we step more into our courageousness in life, especially when we're feeling vulnerable? And that's, I guess that's what we're inviting you to do in some way.
I guess the question of the day is, Angel, how do you get it up?
Oh.
How do you get that courage up?
Now, just because I told you I'm in a new relationship doesn't mean I'm an expert.
We'll have a sidebar about that.
I'm blushing. Oh, geez.
Good thing it's on video.
Right. This is audio only, thank goodness.
No, I mean, but that's a question, right? So how
it is. How do we get our courage up? Courage is a psychological muscle. That's all it is. And it gets strengthened the more we use it. The more we put ourselves in situations where we have to be courageous to say how we feel. We have to be courageous to do something that we haven't done in a while or have never done. When we can build that muscle and practice it to build the resilience. It's all about building resiliency through change so that when change occurs, and it's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep happening. It's the pace of change is accelerating. In case you haven't noticed, putting yourselves in situations where you're engaging in a different path. You really are. You're choosing a different path on purpose so that you become more resilient, more courageous.
Take a different path. And so that speaks to me on a couple of different levels. That can be a different path of how we choose to speak. It can be a different path of just doing something different. It can be going a different route to the grocery store, changing up your daily routine. I'll tell you a funny one. I've had some crazy in my world. All of a sudden, within the last couple of weeks, I found that I was in a pattern of cutting labels off of things. And I started to notice, and I thought, okay, this is kind of weird. You've been cutting labels off of things all of a sudden, and it's not usually a pattern like that. And all
Like out of clothes?
like off of pillows and stuff.
Okay. Oh, I
Right?
hope that's illegal.
I know. Well, that's hysterical. That's the funny thing, is that I found myself cutting off labels, and I'm like, Alicia, you're in a pattern. I said, you're in a pattern of cutting off labels. And all of a sudden I had an epiphany, like, you're cutting off labels.
Oh, no more labels.
Now, what
I love
labels
it.
do you want to leave behind? And you know what I did? I got a magic marker and I started writing things on the labels before I cut them off.
Ooh.
So I wrote not enough. And I wrote, oh God, what all did I write? Oh, I can't remember everything I wrote, but I wrote several different things on the labels. I'm going to burn them, but I've got a pile of labels that I have cut off. And so it's symbolic for me. And so I say, that's another way to have courage. Start to cut off the labels. Go wild under penalty of law. Cut the tags off your mattresses and your pillows.
You're going to get us in trouble. Little troublemaker.
Take a different path. Do something.
I love it.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, do something alone that you've always done with somebody else. Step out in a larger way. Treat yourself. Do something that's for you and you only. And once you get over the hump of doing the new thing, now you've gained a skill and you've gained knowledge that makes life easier for you once you get over that hump.
Becoming self-aware of the things that prevent us from being courageous, the things that prevent us from stepping into that, the doubt, the fear, the programming from our parents or somebody influential in our lives that told us, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't do that. And so we believe we can't do it or we shouldn't do something. Doing your self excavation and figuring out where that comes from to eliminate it and pull it up and burn that label. Literally burn that label. And maybe it's something you can just write down on a piece of paper and burn it. That's really powerful. You've got the power to get rid of it. You can change it. It's just a belief. And we have to recognize those limiting beliefs that hold us back.
Right.
And that's what we're being called to do right now at this time in our human experience.
Have the courage to look your fear in the face. Name it. Call it out. You know, push that envelope as far as you can by taking, at the very least, a baby step in the direction to challenge it. Just a baby step. Because over time, those baby steps add up to giant leaps. So sometimes you take that giant leap, like you moving to Florida, but you can't change what you won't acknowledge. So at least if you call it out and you name it and you say, I see you, I see that I'm afraid of not being enough, or that I'm not smart enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or whatever that is. Name it. Say, okay, I am acknowledging that is a fear. I am naming that fear. Now, what's one thing, one baby step that you can do to try to push on that envelope of fear and take that step in the direction that you want to go? And over time, and you'll feel good, even with the baby steps, you get big hits of energy out of the baby steps, and they really help to create more courage.
Very good. It is getting to know yourself on another level.
Oh,
Getting
yes.
to know who you are on all levels, what your physical capabilities are, your mental, psychological capabilities are, and overcoming some of those limiting beliefs that we're talking about, your spiritual capabilities. It is knowing you're capable of doing and being who you were meant to become. We all came here with purpose. We came here to be and do something to serve humanity in some way. What is it? What do you believe? Why do you believe you're here? And if you really believe that, why aren't you doing it? What's preventing you from doing it? That's just something to be aware of. Standing in conviction in what you believe and really stepping into it wherever you are. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose.
No, it doesn't. Magic. When I think about what your son did in that situation, when an exchange happens like that, that's honest, magic can happen. But magic serves those who dare greatly. That's when you can start to see the magic. Your son will never forget that experience that he had. That is one of his courage stories that in the future, it will inform future choices that he will make. Because I'll tell you what, you talk about courage, most of mine hasn't been hiking on a dangerous cliff or something like that, or being out, having to compete against hundreds of other beautiful, talented women to try out for the lovables. A lot of times mine has been speaking truthfully and boldly to those in authority, or those that the world would look at and think are more because they're wealthier, they're celebrities or whatever. And so that's where I have found my courage comes a whole lot more than most places, is speaking truth to power.
I cannot tell you how much I have always admired that in you. It's really, really refreshing to be around somebody like that. I will say that.
Thank you for saying that. One of the differences I would think would be both having clear communication, but also that communication being clear and neutral without hidden agendas or messages. That is a gift to yourself and to others, I believe, because people don't have to spin mentally and emotionally in your presence because they know what you're saying is what you mean.
That takes courage to do that, but there's so much power and benefit
A ton.
to being that.
A ton.
So there's the with them. That's what's in it for you.
Yes.
And I know in my book, I talk about the natural laws of prosperity. Dedicated to destiny is a pursuit of personal growth, prosperity, and purpose. And that's what really the book's about. It is really clearing all the clutter so that you can live more authentically in your purpose. Part of the process in doing that is practicing self-love. When you love yourself, you can be more courageous. Practicing self-kindness. When you're kind to yourself, you can be more courageous. You're not beating yourself up. Self-nurturing is another law of prosperity. When you can nurture yourself, even if the outcome is not what you hoped for, you can still nurture yourself in the eye of what you can perceive or label as failure. Hey, I tried, I did it. Hey, I moved to Los Angeles to be an actress. And I did. I lived out there for 5 years. I supported myself working in the industry. But did I become rich and famous actress? No. Did I have the courage to do it? Hell yeah, I did. I have nurtured that, where I have no regrets. I'm not going to be swinging on my porch swing at, 105 years old, wondering, gee, I wonder if I'd ever moved to Los Angeles, what my life would be like. Because now I know I had the courage to do that. No regrets. So nurturing the decisions, nurturing yourself, whatever decisions you make, and honoring yourself. Self-honoring is another thing. When you can honor yourself in those times, honor yourself when you have those courageous conversations and pat yourself on the back. That's building that courage muscle. Self-trust is another one. When you can trust yourself, that's huge. Practicing self-trust, because if you don't trust yourself, nobody's going to trust you. And you might have some trust issues with others. I mean, it's like loving. If you don't love yourself, it's really hard for other people to love you. So it's self-trust is a big one in developing courage. What we've talked about already is self-knowing, really knowing yourself, having that self-awareness, becoming the observer of your own life, of your own behaviors, how you respond to things, and saying, it's not exactly how I'd like to be, It's not the highest vision I hold of myself. Let me try this again next time that happens. And know yourself better and having the ability to change. Those are some key things that I've learned along the way that have helped me become more courageous in times where I've needed it most.
Well, it's interesting because all of those words began with self. When I heard that, it was like shoring up yourself, dealing with all these different layers of yourself and shoring yourself up with your knowing and your way of being. That's excellent.
Just stepping into it, doing it even when you're not sure.
Well, that's what
Yes.
courage is, right? That's
Yeah,
what we found out. It's not in the absence of fear. It's in the
Right.
midst of the fear and the doubt.
How do we do this? What are some ways to put it into practice so we can start building that muscle?
I think about what will happen if I don't do it. So I can put myself in both shoes, right? And I can feel the difference between what would it be like to allow the fear to keep me from doing what I feel I need to do or saying what I need to say. What would that feel like compared to, for me, I almost see the speaking of the things as being a release, right? I see it as this is what I need, and being able to release it to however it happens and not being afraid of the loss. That's what you were talking about before.
Mhm.
One of the reasons that we close our voice off is that we're afraid of the loss. And oftentimes when I pay attention to the way it feels in my body, I can feel a definite difference in the tensions between staying in the fear and not doing it, and the resistance that feeds in my body. It takes away my confidence. I can feel the tension when I consider it. So that's definitely one of the ways that I do it. Plus, I don't like to think of myself as not having courage. Granted, I've swallowed my voice on many occasions, and I have not stepped into who I need to be on many occasions. I could probably tell you what most of those are because it dawns on me. And I'm like, look at that. You couldn't take that step for whatever reason. Now, I'm not going to sit and beat myself up about it. When I don't do it, I'm going to say, what do you know about that situation? Why did you not step into it? Well, I was afraid of this. Okay, what can you do in the future that when you get in a similar situation, you can try again and maybe next time be more successful? And one of the things that's going to make me more successful is the tension that not doing it created in my body, and saying, I don't want to feel like that again in the future.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
I
Yeah.
don't ever want to feel like that again. That's the motivation itself.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Contemplating the alternative. I love that. I think a good example too is changing the parenting paradigm. We talked about a new parenting paradigm with our conversation with Lori Farley
Right.
in our previous podcast, but there were certain behaviors that I did not want to carry on. I just wanted to change the tradition of the way parenting has been done in previous generations in my family. And so having the courage to change a paradigm, to change a tradition, but the alternative was I didn't want my son to have some of the emotional baggage that I've had to deal with as an adult and undo because of the way I was raised. Not bad, not abusive.
No.
It was just a strict environment and nobody knew any better. So I just wanted to change that up. I just contemplated the alternative.
That's a really good one, Angel, because I did the same. I went against what the tradition of the family is, what the tribal expectation is, took a totally different path, which is enough to step into that courage and be able to do it. And yes, it helps by thinking, if I don't do this, my child will leave the house with as much baggage as I did, and I will not do that to my child. So that's a huge motivator.
Yeah.
Huge motivator. But then in the midst of it, when everybody else in the tribe has done the same thing and they're still doing the same thing, and you're stepping out in a different way, now you're feeling a little bit vulnerable because you are trying a new way. You feel conviction that you think that it's going to be what feels right, but you're still unsure because it's an experiment, because you haven't seen it done that way before. But now also you're getting slings and arrows from family members that don't agree with the way that you're doing it, that are questioning it every step of the way, and sometimes might not be very nice about it, which causes you to feel more vulnerable and more unsure about what you're doing, because it doesn't feel good to be in that situation. And
Very true.
sometimes you can't explain it enough to where they will understand because you're just coming from a different place. So it takes courage to be able to stand in that place and continue doing something different when it doesn't feel very good. Sometimes the blowback that you're getting.
When Nick was a baby, I actually had family members, will go unnamed, say, "You hold him way too much. You are always holding him." I'm like, "Can you hold a baby too much? Is that even possible to hold a baby too much?" And I'm thinking maybe I wasn't held enough. Maybe that was the mentality
Mm.
that if they're not crying, they don't need to be held. Parenting is just that's a big change to have the courage to undo. Maybe if your dad beats you up as a boy, and as a father, you don't want to carry that. That takes courage to stop that physical abuse and carry that on. It's a really powerful one.
Yeah.
But maybe you should just start with something small that you know you have the courage to do. Something I always talk about whenever I'm speaking or training is I do a lot of visualization. I am a huge proponent of visualizing, and a lot of the greatest athletes on our planet do visualizing.
Mhm.
Michael Jordan, before he stepped on that court, he visualized the whole game. That helps build that courage too. The brain almost acknowledges, like, oh, I kind of feel like I've done this before, and it builds confidence. So visualization is just one of the most powerful tools I think we can do to build courage and step out of comfort zones.
Well, and setting conscious intentions. When you just said visualization, and so I was thinking about that, and I'm like, okay, so how do you use that? Because you work with it so much, what's the best way to visualize? Are you visualizing a positive outcome? Is that how that works? What are they visualizing when they're visualizing?
They're visualizing the action, the behavior. Yeah, whatever the outcome is, if it is winning the game,
Mhm.
but it's really your full potential. It's what do you look and feel like in your full potential, doing whatever it is you're visualizing.
So you said Michael Jordan, whether it's him or whether it's Tiger Woods, imagining themselves shooting, not just seeing a swoosh, but also what does it feel like? What is that tension in your body? What does it feel like? And just visualizing the whole process and the routine. If you're lining up to make a putt, those kind of things, imagining yourself there doing the thing in the way that you need to do it that allows you to be successful.
Whenever I speak, wherever I go, the night before, when I'm going to bed, I go through the entire thing in my brain. I see every gesture that I make, and I see how it's going to unfold while I'm on stage, how I'm going to work the stage, where I'm going to stop and engage the audience. I feel the connection with the audience. I feel the highs and lows of the presentation, where I want the emotional highs and the emotional lows. And I go through all that in my mind. I visualize that first, so that when I do get out there the next day and I'm in front of hundreds of people, I'm okay, because my brain thinks it's already done it.
Yeah.
It's super powerful.
I
It,
have,
it helps alleviate some of the fear
yeah.
and
I have
anxiety.
I have a question. Do you have suggestions for people that aren't really good at visualizing? Because I remember decades ago when I kind of woke up on my path and I was trying to do visualizations and meditations and stuff like that. Back then I found that I couldn't do it. I'm not much of a visual person. And so my mind's eye doesn't seem to come up as easily as it does for other people. Do you have any suggestions for somebody that might have a little bit of a struggle?
Yeah, it does help when the body is calm. That's why I think bedtime is a really good time to visualize. I think a good practice is to go through your day. Even if you go through the activities of your day and say, okay, I woke up, I had coffee, I got on my iPad, I read this news story, I took a shower. If you can go through your day and visualize what your day was like, it is a good practice to train the brain to eliminate the distractions while visualizing, because that's the biggest challenge we have when visualizing is the distractions.
Mm.
I do it all the time. I have to manage those distractions that come in. I think that is one tip, is just calm the body, make sure you're in somewhat of a relaxed state. I have found with my new running practice, I'm using that time to visualize, because I'm like, I'm not a runner. I'm bored to tears out there running. Like, what do you do when you're running? I'm like, oh, I know what I could do. I'll use this time to visualize. And so I'm starting to visualize traveling to different parts of the world, speaking my next book, which I wasn't even in my consciousness, but I'm like, oh, wow. Huh. Okay. I like that. Yeah. I'm visualizing the discipline to do these things. I'm visualizing the retreat that you and I are talking about, but it's going to be flipping amazing. And it's going to take courage to do all of these things I'm talking about. I've never traveled overseas, but I see myself doing it
Right.
for some reason. Maybe it's Dublin, Ireland. Maybe we'll come visit you. All our
In
new,
an Irish pub talking
yes.
about life and philosophy and spirituality. Oh, that would be fun.
Oh, let's do it. All we need is an invitation. Or Germany, or Russia, or any of these other amazing countries that are tuning into Chicks Talking Shift. Hey.
Yes, France. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds, oh, I'm going to start
Okay.
visualizing that right now.
Let's
See
visualize
myself in an
meeting all
Irish pub.
our new friends, the Irish pub. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm all about that.
That's so funny. So, basically, whatever it is, try to take a baby step or a giant leap in the direction of your courage, correct? To make a
Yes.
change in your life and do one thing that requires courage, because all of that helps us, the collective, move forward in positive ways.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll feel so good about yourself, and we want to hear about it. So share it with us. We want, you've got bragging rights. And Chicks Talking Shift, join the Vibe Tribe on our Facebook page and tell us about where you've practiced your courage most recently.
Or even, what courage would you like to practice?
And we'd like to support you in that.
Yes, that's exactly right. So, we love the inspiring stories of, like you shared with your son about, he had the courage to do that, and then this other thing happened. We love those stories. And we also like talking about, how can we get there? What is the thing that you're afraid to do that you would love to take a baby step towards? And then take it and come tell us about it too.
Yes.
Yes, that'll be fabulous.
You've got this, and we got you. We believe in you. We believe in you.
We do.
We
Yeah.
believe in you. Truly.
I've got so much to think about now with courage. Yeah, a lot of things came to mind today. I've got a lot of things, and I'm really going to try to build that muscle a little bit more.
Me too. Good conversation. I liked it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. You have a
All
great
right.
day. And to
I'm
all our
going to.
listeners, have a fabulous day or evening, wherever you are. And thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you.
Yes, we do. Love you.
Till next time, love you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.